welcome to the CTF Underground Podcast, CTF all time. Now your host, my boy, from the hood, Alb and Money Angelou. Let's go. Goal, 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 goal. Hola y bienvenido al Barca Subterráneo. They capture the flag. Todo CTF todo el tiempo. Démosle la bienvenida a sus anfitriones, Alberto y Angelos.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of CTF Underground. My name's Alb. I'm going to be your host today, and with me hosting once again, we got the great Kelby. How's it going, brother?
Yeah, we're making it. Thanks for asking.
All right, so on this episode, guys, we have the one, the only, the CTF admin of Draft League 1, ZMN. How's it going, brother?
And former CTFDL champion ZMN. I'm doing great. No, so happy to be here on the first true episode of CTF Underground. Kelby, this is your brainchild. Albert, thank you so much for assisting him. But no, this is so exciting. I appreciate the invitation and happy to be here.
Awesome. I love that.
Certainly not my brainchild. I got roped into this. Don't forget the PayPal once this feed's on.
Just two BDS brothers doing their thing, you know?
That's what CT said. Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. So, Z, tell us about yourself, man. Everyone listening right now, I'm sure they know who you are, but tell us about yourself, who you are, and then, maybe a little bit about your infantry career, and, just let everybody know.
Yeah, no, I would love to do that. So, and I'll kind of rewind a little bit. So, I'm not a true OG. I didn't start in the Harmless days, but I want to say I started around 2000, 2001. It was certainly pre-pay-to-play under Sony. And I got introduced to the game by a friend of mine in real life, who some of you may know as Bonds Got 73 or Hustler. And, I grew up with Hustler's cousin. And him and I were neighbors, and that's how I met Bonds through that. And we all kind of grew up playing video games of different sorts. And he got me involved with introduced in infantry. And like most new players, started off as a pub guy trying to figure out how to transition from alt strafe to circle strafe. And unlike some, it didn't take 20 years to figure that out. But nonetheless, I got to credit a lot of my infantry past to Bonds and Arthur for showing me the way. And I really kind of embraced pub play right at the beginning and really striving for, game win, the loss ratios, striving for top 100. And I started my first pub squad, Karma with a tilde. And it was the main competitor to Strategist, which was a top 100 squad. And Karma's goal was to try to recruit as many top 100 people to the squad as possible. And over the first couple of years, we ended up with like 53 of the top 100 pub players. And for me, that was like a nice little, crowning achievement, a little something to be proud of in terms of a game. And we have to, look back and say I was probably 13, 14 years old, maybe at that time, maybe even younger. And but recruiting people from top 100 was a really fun thing for me. And it wasn't until a little bit later that I even learned that organized play was like an actual thing. And so probably starting around maybe end of season 3, beginning of season 4, when I started getting introduced to organized league play, it became pretty appealing. And I remember in season 4, I tried out for Leviathan and didn't get selected. And I just thought, okay, well, I'm kind of new. I kind of get it. There were some other kind of like, tier 3 or tier 4 squads that were around that, just didn't seem like they were very organized. They didn't have squad forums or a squad website or all the cool things that squads had back then. So that certainly didn't seem very appealing. In season 5, for whatever reason, I felt some sort of connection to Leviathan. I wanted to try out again for season 5 and did not get in. And so I decided to bring my pub squad Karma into PL in season 5. And as you can imagine, that didn't turn out too well with a bunch of top 100 players from pub trying to compete against some legends of of CTFPL back then. And then finally, in season 6, when I started to take things a little bit more seriously and really kind of understanding what CTFDL was, what organized play was, and of course, I was doing deep dives on squad forums and squad websites and match reports, and and not just what was going on that season, but going back looking at the historical stuff. What was going on in season 1 and 2, and how come there wasn't a championship match back then, and what led to that, and what kind of impact did P2P have on the game, and I really went back into this deep dive, just trying to learn more about the league, more about squad history, player history, and I really had such a good time doing that. Sometimes even more than playing the game itself. I loved that side of things, and so when season 6 strolled around, I forget what squad I tried out on, and I did not get maybe in Martyr or something like that. I think I got offered to like join some farm squad or something like that. And that didn't appeal to me either. I wanted to be competitive. I wanted to, play with some good players. And because I wasn't at the skill set yet to be able to get onto a good squad, I told myself, well, you know what? Instead of just being a follower, I'm going to try to lead my way, chart my own destiny. And that's why I introduced pure talent into CTFPL for the first time in season 6. And, kind of knowing this is going to be a surprise to nobody, but kind of knowing how newer players and new squads were looked at by the veteran population, I made the decision to have pure talent be started as what we now term, we've coined the phrase, fighter trolls, but turned pure talent into a squad of hidden alias people. And, many of those people were plucked out of pub and put on a hidden alias. So these legacy players had no idea if these were legitimate competitors, non-legitimate competitors. But in season 6, we introduced a lot of staples of infantry and CTFPL into the league. We had Flair, or Idioms, that was his first PL squad. We had Popular, XX, X107, XXX. We had Worth. We had Galaxy. And now Worth and Galaxy, no surprise here, they used to play for Leviathan. And I was able to pull them over to pure talent with this belief that we had this mission of, hey, we're going to train some new people. We're going to surprise the league, and we're going to be on these hidden aliases, and we're going to, be the prevailing underdog squad. And I was fortunate that was able to attract some veteran players. We were able to get AGH. We were able to get Daventry. He was bouncing back and forth between Jinx and Lesbian Cabbage. And he agreed, because he was primarily a medic back then, and he agreed that, hey, I'll come play on this hidden alias squad if you let me infantry, because he was kind of pigeonholed into this medic role. And so I said, hey, well, come on board. And Daventry joined as Drasad, Drasad, and he primarily played O&D infantry. And we even had some people, like a good friend of mine, Ciro or Sans Nam, dabble in PT, who was later known to be called Albert, and Just Demon or Taylor was part of that original crew. Carrot Tank was part of that original crew. Bonscott, of course, was part of that crew. And we introduced a lot of really quality, experienced future legends of CTFPL into organized play in season 6, and maybe some people who hadn't quite risen to prominence yet. PT was like a good launching point for them. But no, nonetheless, while PT didn't, no surprise here, didn't perform very well in the playoffs, PT actually ended up being second in the regular season. Now that sounds pretty impressive, but back then we were allowed to schedule scheduled matches, which could kind of artificially, improve your standings because you get awarded points for those wins. But nonetheless, we had a wonderful entry into pure talent into CTFPL in season 6. I really look back fondly on those days, and still talk to a lot of those guys who also fondly look back on those days and say those were some of those fun times we had. We were all relatively new, relatively young, kind of exploring organized play for the first time. So really, really enjoyed those days. Things kind of changed a little bit, and moving on to season 7. I'm not going to go through every single season. I'll cut it off here shortly. But I do think it's important, because if there's any word that's associated with me, I think in infantry, is curse. And so the curse really started in season 7. And so in the off season between 6 and 7, there was some internal turmoil that was going on, primarily between Flair and Daventry, and it all had to do with the name of the squad. You know, Flair didn't like the name Pure Talent; he thought it was too lame. Daventry liked the squad name Pure Talent because it was more true to kind of who we were and our identity. And as a young rookie captain back then, um, you know, even playing a video game back then, you learn some life lessons. As cheesy as that might sound, but you can learn some life lessons as it relates to leadership and decision making from a variety of means. It doesn't just have to be out in the real world; it can be through video games. And I learned an important lesson back then because you know I created Pure Talent from scratch. It meant a lot to me, and back then, because I wanted to appease people, I allowed the name to be changed from Pure Talent to Redemption. And when I did that, I suffered some consequences because the diehard PT people didn't stick around for that. And so when that happened, Redemption was not able to be sustained in between season 6 and season 7. And so at that time, if y'all remember Kaze, Kaze, Kaze was on PT back then. And when Redemption faded in the off season, Kaze said, "Hey man, I'm close with Brood. I'm close with some of these guys. I've been invited to Camp Chaos. Let me see if I can get you on there. You can join us." And so I was offered a position in Camp Chaos, and I took it. And I think I was like the backup to the backup medic behind like Earth, and then behind like Power, and then it was me or something like that. But nonetheless, it was my first opportunity to be a part of something. Even if I didn't get to play, I was able to be a part of something that was involving a lot of, to me, some of the best players. I know a lot of the Camp Chaos guys like Angelus and Kelby will call themselves the underdogs, but the people like me, those were the best of the best players. And so that was my first real kind of internal exposure to that. And then I kind of look back at it as the beginning of the curse, but I think it was actually when I ended up kind of standing more so by my principles. I ended up right before the roster lock of Camp Chaos. I left to help another squad who needed an engineer. And I want to say it was actually, of all squads, I think it was Carnelian's squad. And for whatever reason, he couldn't NG or something like that. But I ended up leaving right before the roster lock of Camp Chaos. And the squad I joined ended up losing like the first round of playoffs, and Camp Chaos went on to win the championship. And beyond some minor successes here and there and several championship losses, until the final ending where we had some PT championships, there was a lot of losses in there in the beginning of the curse. but yeah, that's kind of the first little bit of my start, if that helps.
What do you have like a big regret changing it to Redemption?
I do, but I don't. I do in the sense that it would have been nice to have been able to keep the core of PT around longer. And had I been a little bit more wise back then and had the ability to kind of see the forest through the trees, I should have recognized that Flair probably would have left no matter what. Because even after we changed the name from PT to Redemption, Flair still left. And he was the driving force behind the name change, who I ended up siding with. And in a way, I regret that decision. But at the same token, even as a young, impressionable, adolescent, it taught me a valuable lesson. So I guess in that sense, I'm glad it happened. But in the same token, it would have been nice to have kept the PT core there and see what that could have turned into had PT been around in a more consistent basis. PT was around season 6. We made a comeback in season 8. Then we had an offshoot of PT like in season 11, 13, 15, 17, 21, 22. But it would have been nice to see what could have been had the PT core stuck around after season 6.
And I feel like you got a black book of CTFPL history because you just remember so much. Like I thought my first season was season 7, but I do remember now that you're saying it, playing a few games with Pure Talent in season 6 with the free scheduling matches. I do remember that, and I do remember us getting absolutely stomped, like when we had to play good squads. But I gotta agree with you when you said that being involved in infantry and being a captain and leading a squad and being in a leadership role on this game like helped you and like taught you valuable lessons in life? Because I know it sounds cheesy like you said, but in my life, like I've been in management roles and I've had like 20 guys under me, and just being able to lead, 20 dudes in this game and just dealing with different personalities, different people, different places all over the world, it actually helped me too, man. Like no joke, deal with people in my real life jobs and, day to day, and it taught me some valuable lessons too. Like I guess with the whole flare thing with you, like people are, they're not always there to help you. They might fuck you, and you side with one guy and then he's gone the next day and stuff like that. So I do agree with all that. It's I don't know if Kelby can agree or has any input on it for like his life and his job leading squads and stuff, but like I did find that helped me too.
Yeah, I like the phrasing Z used as far as being like an impressionable teenager. That's what we all were. For these core years of infantry, we're between the ages of like 30 or 13 and 19 years old, I believe. So we've got whatever going on in our real lives. For me, I'm growing up in small town Alabama. I'm not exposed to many different sects or types of people. So I'm meeting these people on infantry, we're becoming friends and whatnot. And then as the years go by, like I don't know how I became a squad leader at all. Like everyone knows, I had this big CTFX squad. We won a lot of games. It didn't mean anything, so it wasn't a league. But to this day, people still remember, like, oh yeah, you're the guy that ran the CTFX squad. So I think in hindsight, yeah, I guess it was some kind of forced leadership because I wanted things to be done a certain way. And working in corporate IT now, I still kind of run the same kind of ship. Like I do want things done the right way. I don't like to take shortcuts and whatnot. I am an overemphasis kind of person on details. You guys have been on squads with me. I'm the nerd in the background making all the diagrams in MS Paint. I'm all about optimizing.
True story.
A few notes I took just now from ZMN's introduction. I just learned ZMN doesn't alt strafe. That's great because I thought this whole time, like that was the biggest revelation I heard. He talked about bringing in a lot of folks into these, quote unquote Hydra troll aliases. And with the fluid scheduling, I remember this as clear as day. I don't know what season it was, but I was on one of these BDS stack seasons where we're winning every game. And I was like tricking Cypher into scheduling our games early so I could then help ZMN by sneaking onto another alias and play later. Now, luckily, this was regular season, so who really cares? But I think he had an alias like Demon_33 on the PL site. And it was just another account ZMN had, and he would rotate whoever was available to play for his squad. We'd come on, not say anything, no one else on the team would know. It would just be like this inner thing between friends of, yeah, I'll cover you at DF, no problem, so-and-so's not going to make it. I probably did that 3 or 4 times on a PT regular season.
Yeah, no, and I mean, everybody might have some baggage in their past about how they handled some things, but I certainly don't mind taking some extra points for creativity. But this wouldn't work now with the current population. But when you had a significantly larger population, it was easier to kind of exploit little loopholes. And I still kind of like to brag about it. But what I used to do back in the day was on the PL site, I would create an account, add it to the squad, and then that account name, that alias in game had not been created yet, so that was not technically associated with anybody. So I needed somebody to fill in. There was no hopping onto another account. All they did was create the alias in game, and poof, they were on the squad. And then that fake alias on the PL site would kind of rotate in and out, and different non-taken aliases would be there for the taking.
Dude, as long as I can remember, I like competitive and ZMN is just like anything to win. It like
absolutely,
that does not surprise me that you had fucking aliases that were not made yet on your team, so that people could do that, man. Like you are just so competitive and you hate losing that you will literally do anything to win.
Yeah, no, I think I've got a little Machiavellian in me. Whatever, at all costs, it is what it is. The good outweigh. What's the phrase of Machiavelli? God, it'll come to me. But it's gonna drive me crazy. But yeah, whatever it takes to win, I certainly agree. And I also think because of that kind of competitive spirit, part of me got that from my dad, actually, kind of in my upbringing. And it was really kind of the first time, that whole situation with the PT changing the name to Redemption and fading after that, and why that sticks out in my head so much is because that was really kind of the first time where I kind of violated my own principles regarding things. I was raised, even from a young child, to this simple phrase my dad always told me growing up, and that was, you walk in like you own the place. And whether that's your first time you're walking into kindergarten, the first time you're walking into middle school or high school, or a new environment or a new job, you walk in like you own the place. You're not timid. You're not this. You're not that. And I've tried to adopt that philosophy everywhere I've gone. And it's not like an ego or a cocky thing, but it's just, hey, I'm going to be confident in whatever position I'm in. I'm going to stand by my principles. I'm going to do things my way. And when I kind of caved and changed the name from PT to Redemption, that was the first real time, even was it involving a video game, it was the first time I was like, wow, I can't believe I kind of went against the way I've been raised. I can't believe I've kind of violated my own beliefs and principles. And that's why it truly is kind of like a core memory in some weird way. And even though it's a video game, it's something I've kind of told myself over time that ain't never going to happen again. I'm glad that happened. I guess this reemphasizes how I'm kind of not regretful that it took place, because even in my professional life, being in law enforcement, moving up very quickly between the two agencies I've been at, it's because I do things my way, and I'm not going to be a follower. I'm going to be a leader, and sometimes that means I'm leading a party of one. But I'm not going to ride somebody else's coattails. I'm going to chart my own path, and that name change from PT to Redemption was kind of a good reminder of why that's important.
I think you need those things in life, man, where you do it and you're like, why the fuck did I do that? And then you learn from it, and it never happens again. You know what I mean? Absolutely.
And that's exactly what it was for me. And I'm glad that's something that happened to me at 13 years old, and not 23 years old. So I'm glad it happened earlier, and I'm glad it happened with what's in reality very, very low to no stakes. But I'm glad it happened then. I'm glad it sat with me long enough to make an impact. And but I will say, when Flair made his comeback here, recently last draft league season, him and I used to be mortal enemies from 13 years old and beyond. And now I love the guy like a brother. It's cool.
It's good that you can kiss and make up.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all mid 30s to 40s, I want to say now.
We're pretty old around here.
Yeah, it's not like it used to be. I know there's still some drama in the game by some people, but for the most part, everyone's mature and old, and we should all just be able to get along at this point. I feel, anyways. I do have one question about the Redemption thing. I guess I didn't really play a whole lot. Season 7 really to 13. Redemption came back 15 or something like that? Is that right?
Yeah. I think it came back once before that, but the championship version of Redemption came back in 15. And it's kind of a funny story, funny in kind of a pathetic way, but it's kind of funny how Redemption did make a comeback, because I created Redemption after the renaming of PT, and I still kind of kept PT as a little side project. It certainly came back multiple iterations down the road, but I still maintained control over what was Redemption. And we talked about kind of finding exploiting some loopholes earlier in CTFPL and the PL website and in-game aliases and all that kind of stuff. Well, there was also somebody else who was pretty good at exploiting loopholes, and that was our boy Flair. Because unlike 2024, when you've got passwords set for things and your password expires every 3 months or 6 months, in infantry your password never expired. And for whatever reason, many, many moons ago, I shared my account info with Flair.
Oh, no.
And who logged into my account and transferred themselves the squad name Redemption?
So that's
Flair the Liar.
That season 15 version of Redemption, Flair owned that?
I believe it. Wasn't that a Flair Sillywinker project?
No,
Flair and Sillywinker project.
At least by the time I got to playoffs, I don't believe so. Because I believe Flair was with me on Phoenix Down randomly that season.
Yeah, because I want to say Redemption did come around prior to season 15, and season 15 may have been the Sillywinker primary. Yeah. I think Sillywinker was primarily over Redemption at 15, which probably means that the first iteration of Redemption happened. Okay, so season 7 Camp Chaos, season 8 was Smurfs, season 9 was Cuck, season 10 was BDS, season 11 was Newfie. So sometime season 13 was PT. Season 12,
you missed 12. What happened at 12?
Yeah, I don't remember 12. Maybe 12 was Redemption. They didn't win in 12, but I don't remember who won in 12. I'm sure it's probably another BDS season. But
Oh no.
I know. I'm preaching to the BDS brothers here, but um, but yeah. So I'm going to guess somewhere probably in that. It wasn't Cook. No, Cook was Daventry. I think Wanker was on there too. Wanker and I were on Memento together in 10. Newfie was around in season 11 because that's when I created the squad Elite and brought Elite to CTFDL for one season. And real quick on Elite. So Elite's kind of got an interesting history, and because it was only around for one season, not many people remember it. But Elite was a squad that I kind of formed similar to PT, minus the hider troll aspect of it. It was, hey, what kind of people can we go out there and find that have some potential that don't really have much CTFPL experience or any PL experience at all? And it was just like an effort to try to bring a new generation of players into the game. And Elite was responsible for bringing some of the best players that have been around in PL in a long, long time. And season 11's Elite introduced Wolven, either back into PL or into PL. It introduced Dropped or Dro into PL. It introduced Sword of Rage to PL. It introduced NAC to PL. It introduced, who am I forgetting here? Abbott to PL. A handful of others. I feel guilty for forgetting a couple others, but no, Elite was another version of kind of what the way PT was modeled back in season 6, where we're trying to pluck out some talented pub players, and what can we do to turn them into, mix them up with some strong core players. We had Boss and Tyson and Jedi Legend. Those were kind of like a staple of guys that had been around me since the beginning of PT or multiple iterations of PT. And then we filled them. Oh, Scott the Man, if you remember Scott, he was part of that. And and then we surrounded this core group of players with the Knacks and the Dros and the Swords and these other players who turned out to be some of the best players in PL history, quite frankly. But the reason I remember this season 11 being Elite is because I was so proud of my best find, and that was Wolven. He happened to randomly appear in pub one day. I recognized the alias from pub play many years ago, and I had been steadily working on him for quite some time. I get him to join Elite. He's rocking and rolling. He's becoming this phenomenal COD, the infantry. And we're a couple games in, and then all of a sudden, this fucking guy.
What happened?
This fucking Albert. All of a sudden, we're practicing one day, and the practice comes to a halt, screeching halt. And Wolven says, "Hold on a second, I need to tell you something." I said, "Yeah, man, what's up?" And he types into the chat in all caps, macroed multiple times, "Newfie, what?" And he leaves the arena, goes into Newfie's practice arena, leaves Elite, and joins Newfie, and they go on to win the championship.
Man,
so it was just another iteration of why curses exist, but
I
but
can't
Albert was able
remember,
to pry
man.
him out of my fingers.
I can't remember exactly like how it all happened. I know that I was working on him, and I needed him to like round out the defense. Like that was my last pick. I wanted him so bad, and I don't know if something happened in that practice or like it was just like me bugging him enough, or if he seen Newfie play and he was like, you know what, maybe this squad got a better chance. I'm gonna hop over there. But just one day, man, I wrote him again, and he was like, all right, I'm gonna do it, and I'm like, nah, you're fucking with me, and he's like, no, I'm doing it. And then I got a picture of that. It was back when we used like AOL Messenger or whatever. He sends me a screenshot, and I'm like, all right, let's go, man. And yeah, we went on, dude. I remember like me and you used to be like, we were always friends, but we were always like so competitive with each other. We would take on each other all the time. But I gotta say, man, you like out of all the people that played infantry or like captain a squad or like had something to do with CTFPL, I feel like you've done the most for CTFPL over the years. Like of course people like were admins and all this stuff and it updates and stuff, but like as for like bringing players in and helping the league and like just all of that combined, I think that you did the most for PL, because like majority of the players that you're mentioning now that you've brought into it and you showed them into PL, like you brought me into PL originally, like I would have been involved anyways because like a lifelong friend Smeagol was on DS back in, season 6. Like he's the one who got me into it originally, But I was like, nah, I'm not playing that league. Like, I'm not good enough for that, because I watched some games over at his house, and I was like, dude, I can't compete with that. But then you reached out to me about, I can't remember the name of the squad now, Karma or whatever, originally going into PL, and I was like, I'll play, whatever. And then it's just like I hopped on Camp Chaos, and that's when I met Kelby, and it was like a whole different world of learning the game. So, like,
absolutely.
Yeah, like I learned, dude, as much as I did
paint diagrams.
Yeah, man, and like as much as I didn't play on Camp Chaos, that's where I really learned like the fundamentals of the game, like how the game's supposed to be played, and then I carried on like later squads. Like I left Camp Chaos and then I joined Course and led that squad, and like we did really good. Like taking on BDS and like actually like showing up and playing. We didn't win anything, but I brought a bunch of players into the game as well. They were like taught them, like it was Metal, Rocky, you know,
Boss, Phaser.
Yeah, Boss, Yellow Blood, like
rookie 187, Jono.
Yeah, dude, it was a lot of people, and I like basically brought every bit of information I learned in Camp Chaos and brought it over to them, and then taught those guys. So me and you kind of had like the same mentality this entire time of like teaching people and growing the game and stuff. But I feel like overall you did by far the most like good for CTFPL out of anybody who played it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think I did an okay job playing kind of a support role over the years. You know, I kind of dabbled in some leadership positions later on down the road. Eventually, kind of rep, and I think I was a head rep under you or a co-admin with you at some point, just for like a brief stint. But I always kind of felt my role was better as a member of the community, trying to build it from within. And I think my mindset's just a little bit different. Of course, I love playing the game, but I reflect. The first baseball game I ever played was on Nintendo 64, and it was All-Star Baseball 2000. And I'm sure I dabbled in some of the Ken Griffey stuff back in the day too. But what I liked about All-Star Baseball 2000 was I forget what it was called. It was either called Fantasy Mode or General Manager Mode or something like that, where you can kind of create a team and do salary caps, and and I would spend all my time on All-Star Baseball 2000 doing that stuff. I wouldn't actually play the game. But I'd be building rosters and salary caps and recruiting new players, and I wouldn't play a single game. I would do like a simulated season, see how the team works out, and then make adjustments the following season for the team. And I enjoy doing that kind of stuff, and more than I did playing the game. And I think for whatever reason, I kind of treated infantry the same way. I just enjoyed that style of things, and that's why even for some of the many squads that I did captain, I didn't mind being in spec, because I liked doing that side of the management of those things, the leading of those things. I really enjoyed that. But to tackle on what you said earlier, and thank you again for the compliment, but what you said earlier, I think me too, Camp Chaos was a humongous introduction to how CTFPL is supposed to be played. When we had PT in season 6, I tried out for Leviathan several times. It didn't work out. Karma in season 5 as a pub squad made no sense at all. We were not competitive whatsoever. But PT was the first time we were actually kind of competitive. But everything we were doing, we were learning from scratch. We didn't learn from anybody else. So we were probably practicing strategies that had been tried and failed for many seasons prior to that, because you don't know what you don't know. And it wasn't until the exposure to Camp Chaos and the Kelbys and the Hearsts and the Jaxes and the Orbeez and the Broods and the Chucks and all these guys who were staples at this point. It was really the true introduction to what organized play is supposed to look like and how to actually be competitive. So even though I didn't finish the season on Camp Chaos, and I do regretfully I hate the fact that I left literally day before roster lock. I voluntarily leave to go help another squad, get wrecked the following Sunday, and then watch from a distance as Camp Chaos marches to the championship. But but it is what it is. But maybe I had a good time in PL. Maybe I didn't always have the best decision making skills, apparently. But nonetheless, like you said, Alb, CC was just a great introduction to how competitive play is supposed to be done.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to get close with Kelby during that time, because
man, you got to stop saying that,
dude. We just like clicked or whatever, and then I learned so much from him. Like, I don't know if you remember Kelby, but we used to go into private arenas and like fucking talk about shit and test shit, and it was like the MS Paint fucking nerd out shit.
It's the worst memories of my life.
It was the best of times. But that's what
Yes.
I was able to bring to like Newfie. Because everyone knows Newfie
Yeah.
didn't have that, strong ass lineup with all the good players, but it was the
Yep.
leadership and like it all stems from Camp Chaos. So like without that, fuck, I don't think PT would have ever done anything and Newfie would never have done anything.
Yeah,
I think-
agreed.
I think for a lot of us it does. Like, we like to reference Camp Chaos because, yeah, we all played on it. That was our first breakthrough where someone took down BDS in our era. And, like, the Hearth and I, like, we talk about it all the time. Like, that one meant the most to us. But it still goes back to those players the man kind of mentioned before. Like, we did have Chucky, who had, like, near or championship experience. We had the Striker brothers. We had some core that could, like, show us this is what a practice looks like. And, like, Pac, Hearth, and I, we had seen that from BDS, but it's different. BDS was outplaying everyone at the time. Like, they were just so much better that their practices didn't have to be as strict as it's perfect. Their skill level is just better. But I mean, we got down to the details in Camp Chaos. We were practicing twice a week for 2 to 3 hours, maybe more than that. I can't remember perfectly. We had hurricanes at the time. Hurricane Katrina's coming through. I'm playing from a hospital that has a generator because I didn't want to miss practice. Like, it meant something to me at that time. So yeah, that one did mean a lot to all of us. One of my
And even-
favorite things in hindsight. Sorry, Z. Let me just finish this up.
Yeah.
Is Albert today. Like, people think of Albert as this is Albert, multi-time winner, Newfie leader. I will never think of Albert that way. I knew this guy. He was this annoying accent kid on Camp Chaos, sitting behind Verb, begging to play. Like, and he put in the hours, man. You talk about like someone sticks around late at the gym. We finished practice. Albert's to me, "Hey man, can you stay up? Can we go over some stuff?" And I'm like, "Dude, can you just leave me alone? Like, you're not a starter. Like, sit back, kid." But he did. He put in the work. We spent hours and hours on MS Paint trying things, trying to get exact damage values. That's why even now when I play OIMP, like, that all stems from Camp Chaos, playing with Jericho and Eagle. Like, I know how much damage an RG can take to an MG. It's not random. And Albert was part of that crew. Like, he wanted to know. He knew it made a difference. And, I mean, the proof's in the pudding. You look at the seasons that came after that, we all kind of evolved. Albert ran Newfie to multiple titles. A lot of us went back to BDS and won multiple titles. ZMN eventually found an imaginary title somewhere. We all won. It's great. But I did want to touch on some previous stuff, CMN, for you specifically. You've
Sure.
had all these different squads and experiences, so 2 questions at first. You've played about every class there is in the game. Is there one class that you just enjoy playing more than the rest of them? And why is the answer Infiltrator?
Yeah, good question. Good question. So I think like any good question, we got to approach it backwards. So it's easier for me to say I hate playing squad leader. I'm terrible at squad leader. I hate playing O heavy. I'm terrible at O heavy. And then everything else I kind of like. And now not everything else I'm good at, but no, I certainly do like. I like playing positions that have the ability to have some flexibility throughout the game. So you're not kind of pigeonholed into one singular function or one singular role. One reason why I don't mind being spec info or kind of leading is because you're kind of involved in every aspect of the game. You're not just solo focused on one aspect of it. And when you're an engineer, which oftentimes people don't realize how flexible that position can be, or you're an infiltrator, there's so many different things you can do with those classes that can make room for you to be an impact player in the game. And if it means making as infill, making a big play on offense and making a game-changing play, or getting your JT in and out, or you're able to blink in and out yourself, or you're able to get a good storm or TB into the base, that's got a high potential to make a good impact. And certainly it's also got the opportunity to be a high risk, high reward type situation where you can fall flat on your face. But at the same token, you've got the ability to be a high impact player on the offense. And at the same token, you're in a position to be able to bail out your defense when they need some help too, in a more effective way than maybe if you're just some O infantry swinging home. And so I've always been kind of drawn to classes that allow you to have some flexibility in the role and flexibility in the game. Here recently, aside from some mixes where I certainly like to play infill, mostly at the request of Angelus and Chucky.
I've never requested this.
Just like Angelus has never written lore here recently,
Okay.
but
Stay on topic.
but no, I really like engineering. I remember Albert and I kind of talking about this. I don't know if we were talking about this during draft league season last season or when we were talking about this, but we were both kind of like reminiscing on just the engineer class itself, because a lot of people just look at the engineer class and say, okay, well, yeah, you spend 30% of the game mining and 30% of the game, healing turrets, and the remaining 40% of the game, kind of fighting at home. But in reality, engineering is so much more than that. You can swing to offense, you can shallow blink your base, you can defend your medic. There's so many opportunities to be an impact player, and I've just really enjoyed the flexibility of those classes. Now, I don't really know what my best class is. I think I'm like a B tier player at several classes. I don't think I'm elite at any of them in particular, and I'm totally fine with that. But certainly, I think even a B tier player, if put on a decent team, can be a pretty good impact player. I don't think there's any shame in that.
Yeah. And I would never credit you for any skill because I don't believe that, Zeman. But as far as communication, I'll say you're one of those A tier people. Whether you're in spec or you're in the game, like I can count on you to communicate on whichever side of the game you're in. Even if you're not at the base, you're like, hey guys, I'm gonna need about 15 seconds. Like that's so valuable to the other people in the game because we can play around that. I think a lot of people miss that, like in organized play. If you have a team with clean comms versus a team yelling, get this guy, get this guy, get this guy, like it's night and day of how to take down a base or how to keep a base up. So I can appreciate you for that. One more thing before we get closer to like the draft information and whatnot. You've played all these games in PL since preseason -7. It sounds like not a specific game, but a different style of game. Do you like the games that kind of go back and forth for a long time, the ebb and flow of a long game, or do you prefer the in and out of a game where we're looking at like 15, 20 minutes straightforward? No emphasis on SD or overtime and all that stuff that the new generation's talking about, but just your personal preference. Because for me, I actually kind of like the long games. I like as the pressure builds up and it feels like the stakes are higher. So I want to hear from you. Do you have a similar take or an opposite one?
Yeah, no, I think your take on that is certainly kind of molded into the minority perspective nowadays. But I am totally in that minority. I am all about if we play a game and it's 2 hours long, I'm going to wish it was 2.5 hours long, especially if we lost. Like I would have been happy going another 30 minutes and trying to win the game. If anything, I really dislike short games because I think the longer the games go on, and Kelby, you kind of mentioned this or kind of alluded to it, the stakes kind of continue to get higher and higher and higher because even when it feels like you've got this stalemate going on and, offense is getting one MG down every 3 or 4 runs and it gets put back up and kind of rinse and repeat. All that actually means is it's going to take one screw up for that entire thing to go lopsided. And now it's not like playing the game. Now it's like, okay, we need to defend for making one single mistake because we've been able to hold this long. If one thing goes wrong, that could cost us the base.
Yep.
And so I prefer longer games. I think if anything, that kind of helps increase the adrenaline a little bit more. And now that's not to confuse it with long games that involve squads that are not adapting to a long game. It's one thing if you've got an offense that's put together and they are steadily rushing into F4, getting shit on for 75 minutes, never making it to the turrets, and defense is not swinging to help their offense. There's not lineups that are being changed or modified or things like that. That's not fun for anybody. But when you try to adapt to those types of circumstances and you say, okay, hey, well, we've been running 3-imp heavy for 30 minutes. It's not working. Let's throw a JT in there. Let's throw a 4-imp in there. Let's throw an infill in there. Let's try to make some changes. I really enjoy games like that. It makes me think about the last season of CTFDL back in 2015 in the PT CKY Championship. Long game. I forget exactly how long it was. Maybe 75 minutes or something like that. We had to change our offense 4 or 5 times. And just to try to break through the Sillywanker, Greed, Exodus, Waylander. I'm not going to say Infinite, but those 4 guys, try to break through that defense, and it was very challenging. But that's where the strategic and the strategy part of the game comes through. It's the skill is important, but team composition is important. Lineups are important. Those are all important elements of the game that I thoroughly enjoy. And so, yeah, we might have certain players on our offense playing against our defense, but what can we do to change up that composition to have maybe a better impact on what we're trying to do? So I don't mind the long games at all. I actually kind of like the long games as long as the squads are trying to adapt to make sure it's competitive for the entirety of that match, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. From experience, let's go back to CC7 one more time. Our long game that season was the playoff game. I want to say it was against Martyr. It was semifinals before we got to the BDS game. And we're sitting at D6 defending the whole game, and we're sending Chuck at him for about 30 minutes. We got Chuck and Rufo with the Striker brothers and Jericho whatnot attacking A7, and nothing's happening. We finally convinced Chuck, let's get Bliss in. Bliss was the heavy. I don't know if you guys remember Blissed, but he was a
Oh,
mod,
yeah.
also heavy for CC. He gets in after a while. They start to take down turrets. We finally crack that base. I think it's like 58 minutes. Like having Bliss take down half the turrets, quick subbing Chucky back in, and he flags it and gets out. And that's the game that I remember. Like I played all these seasons for BDS and everything. I played for all kinds of squads. I remember that being the long game where I'm at home on defense, like getting sweaty, thinking like, man, I just don't want to blow this. We just got to hold on because we're having a good season. We got to get to BDS. And the next week comes around, we're all pumped for BDS. Like, let's do it. Let's take them down. 17-minute game. It's like in and out. Get them out of here.
Anticlimactic.
Yeah, it was. But looking back, it was that martyr one. I love the long ones. I love getting nervous on either side. Like, man, I don't want to blow this. I want to finish it for the team. I think those are the good games. I understand people now have the constraints and everything, but I just want to get your personal view. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no, and I know we've done a lot of talking about CC, and it just makes me think of one more thing, and I'll at least stop bringing up CC all the time. But I think one thing that made CC not just enjoyable, but a great learning opportunity. And unfortunately, even as we've all gotten older, I still think maybe it's just gaming in general. This doesn't really always exist, but a lot of us were probably considered the younger guys on CC.
Oh, yeah.
Jericho and all them. They're probably only 2 or 3 years older than us, but they felt like grown men. They just that's at least how I looked at them. They were the grown men basically.
Absolutely.
But what I liked about that, with the exception of Chuck, who was a different version of the Chuck you all are familiar with today. The old Chuck, I'll sum it up in one phrase, and that's "What the fuck, yo." That's that's old Chuck. Okay. But you can never take away his competitiveness. So that was always there, and he could always walk the walk. So Chuck was certainly an exception to the rule. But I think what was different about CC from many other squads, maybe of course with the exception of BDS, but the majority of people who played on CC, they were pros. Jericho, Armageddon Fang, the Striker Brothers, Angelus, Firth. There was no bitching, there's no complaining. There's no arguing and fighting. There's no drama. There's no, they might, get into it in OBD, a little shit talk here and there, but that's not carrying over into the squad forums. That's not carrying over into the TeamSpeak or Ventrilo later on. And, nowadays, things can get a little bit petty, a little bit childish. People can be a little bit too emotional. It was a completely different environment when you're playing with the pros who are competitive, they're mission driven, they're goal oriented, and everybody's kind of united trying to do the same thing. That is, I don't care if that's a video game. I don't care if that's the team you work with in the workplace. I don't care if that's, your kid's baseball team, whatever it is. When you find yourself in that kind of environment, that's contagious. I love that. I live for that. And that means we were finding that in a video game. That's great. And on the rare occasions, we find that in like a random mix and everybody's on Discord. Yep. There's no complaining. Everybody's on the same page. I mean, isn't that a blast? Isn't that when it's the most fun? Absolutely. And CC was that to a T. So I just wanted to add that little bit about CC because that's probably the biggest memory I have about CC.
Yeah, and that same kind of core carryover stuff. I didn't join Newfie, but I hung out with Newfie, 20 times more than I hung out with the BDS guys. I can't tell you via history revisionist why I was on BDS instead of Newfie. I just know that I was. I think Albert would echo, like, they had the same thing in Newfie. Those guys wanted, they put the work in, they listened, they learned, and they just took over for a couple seasons. So, again, it's not like Camp Chaos spawned all this stuff. A lot of us learned from BDS and some leadership things from Hans on Vantage, how much time that guy would put in during the HP season.
Yep.
But it's just putting that time in. It's not just logging in and saying, I'm a good dueler, I know where to stand. Like, it's learning everything you can. The intricacies of this game where 1 second can change everything. I think that's what made the squads win all those titles.
I agree. And it's like,
agreed.
If you have one of the 10 people not doing what the other 9 are doing, it could literally toss the game. You could, you need everybody on the same page. You need everybody doing the same thing. Everyone's following it, and it's not fighting like Z's saying. But one thing I do want to say, like, you brought up the long games. I think that's a leadership thing or like a competitive thing. And for me personally, like, I'm on the same, side as you guys. I enjoy like the 70-minute games and 50-minute games over a 20 because of the same thing Z said. And I don't know if it's the engineer or like the squad leader aspect of it all, but when I think of infantry, I think of that like anxious, adrenaline rush feeling where, like you said, Kelby, you're at home and you're like, oh God, Hans is coming in. We better not fuck this up.
Instant sweat.
Yeah, like, man, your hands are sweaty. And then after the game, you're like so worked up, everyone's freaking out, everyone's so happy when you win. Like, that's what I play for. We don't find it so much now because, there's not really that much competitiveness. I'm hoping that in this season of Draft League, like, I can get some of that back, maybe, like even 20% would be great. But like, that's why I signed up for Draft League this time. And like, I'm hoping to get it. But like you said earlier, Z, we talked about the engineer thing after like week 2 of your games in Draft League 1. There's literally 5 ways to play engineer. And when the engineer's listening to this now, when you guys figure that out and you start playing like 4 or 5 of them in one game, that's when you become a good engineer and a game-changing engineer, and you finally learn to play the game. Like Z said, like if you're spending 60% of your time at home or in the caves or whatever, holding the EB button, you're not really contributing what you should be. Engineer can clear offenses, they can clear defenses, you got blinks, like there's just so many different things you could do, but it all boils down to communication. You're not going to be able to leave your home if, you don't know when your turrets are going down. So like, you can go to enemy and you need someone to tell you, all right, you need to get home, they're coming by, like the last choke right now or something. So there's a lot of things tied into it, but once you tap into that as an engineer, I think it's definitely the best class to play, and you learn the most playing that class, and it's when you become really good at the game, is like figuring out all that stuff, in my opinion. But to oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and you have the ability as an engineer to really fill in any kind of the weak spots you have on your team. If your offense is a little outmatched, maybe you're going to have the ability to spend a little more time on swinging on offense, providing some EB support, providing extra reps for an O heavy, providing some, TV flanks or something along those lines to add a little bit more pressure to help the offense kind of get past that stalemate. If you're playing on a defense and the drain's not very good, you support with the EB. If you're playing on defense and your infantries aren't finishing as well, you can focus more of a DPS approach. And and I would argue engineers can do just as much DPS as a shotgun RG the infantry when played right. So engineer is so flexible. You can be involved in so many different aspects of the game. Yeah, nobody enjoys mining, but that's a small little price to pay to play a larger kind of unforeseen role in the game. And I love it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, so to step away from that and to get into like the Draft League side of things, I want to know, like, take us through, infantry first hits Steam, you get wind of it, you want to get back into it, you're getting that, I want to have, PL on the go again, I want to get that competitiveness back, I want to get some matches, even if it's just OVDs and mixes and not a Draft League. How did you go about getting all these people back, and, like, how did you contact them? How did you convince them? Like, take us through it. Was it hard? Like, what did you do? How much time did you put in? I think everybody wants to know this.
Yeah, no, good question. And I'll start off the bat saying it took a lot of time. And just like I talked earlier about, back in season 6, having to find some exploits and loopholes to make some things happen, and there may be some little white lies here and there to try to get something done. There are certainly some elements of that introduced into my methods to get people back into the game also. But fortunately, this process really started many years ago. A lot of people aren't really comfortable, connecting social media with people from video games and things of that nature. I've never cared. I'm just an open book kind of a guy. And so for many years, I've kind of grown these Facebook friendships and social media friendships with a variety of infantry people. I started the CTFDL infantry Facebook page. That group's probably up to 250, 300 people. I've got a bunch of Facebook people on Facebook, but I bet you I've probably got 400 or 500 Facebook friends that are from the infantry background.
That's
and
insane.
It is insane. Now, I will say, and hopefully you don't have to bleep this out of the podcast, but I do a pretty good job remembering who most of their aliases are. But there's a lot of people from a certain part of the world where a lot of the names are the same, and you kind of forget who they are. So I'll let y'all read between the lines on that one. But nonetheless, kind of maintaining those contacts. And it was kind of funny, going through and clicking on somebody to send them a message to let them know, hey, infantry's back, it's on Steam. And then like the chat history pops up, and you're like, wow, I haven't messaged this person since 2009. It's just kind of funny seeing that. And But I do think all the work that was put in by Ace and Joven, and all those guys to get it onto Steam was admirable because one, it helps lend a little credibility to the game, and I think two, it makes it a little bit easier just to download it, get access to it, um, rather than hey, go to some random website and download a file that your Norton antivirus is gonna flag when you try to download it. It removes some of those barriers. So just the mere fact that it was on Steam, I think, made it a little bit easier. But no, it was steady, getting hitting people up on Facebook, and then step two to that was, working with people that I had a decent relationship with on Facebook. Say, hey, well, who do you have? Who do you know that you can get a hold of, or who can you provide me their information? And some of them are kind of hesitant a little bit to kind of start diming out some of their friends and who they might be, but eventually they kind of get an OVD in, they kind of get excited, they get the itch a little bit, and then it's a little bit easier for them to start sharing some information about who their buddies' names might be, so I can reach out to them on Facebook. And it's always kind of like an interesting thing, like, are they even going to, one, read my message, and two, are they going to think I'm a stalker? So it's going to be like, they're either going to ignore it or think I'm some creep weirdo. But it's a risk. It's a risk I'm willing to take for the game. But,
Dude, I can't believe you messaged District's mom. That is nuts.
In all fairness, me and District's mom and I, have been Facebook friends for like 15 years. So, I mean, I don't want to say I have a relationship with District's mom. That's not going to sound right. But,
there's history.
We know each other. She's cool. And so I was hitting up District. He said, well, hey, man, where I'm at, I don't have a computer. And so I just went through the small step of asking District's mom if she would get him a computer. That's all I did.
Dude, what was her response?
She said nothing. And
I blocked and deleted you.
But hey, we're still friends on Facebook to this day. But it got District's attention, and he downloaded the game shortly after when he was visiting home, and he came back and trained up some O infantries for a month or so. But no, the next step I took was going through the Wayback Machine, the Internet Archives, and going through the myriad of different versions of the CTFDL sites that existed. Albert, I know you were the brainchild behind a couple of those. Carnelian, Jacques, if y'all remember Jacques, Green Goblin, of course, and all those before them, going back to the infantry sector days, Enemy Base, Devoid, CTFPL.net, CTFPL.goblin1.com, and all the iterations of the PL sites that existed. And even on the archive pages, while not every single page is still accessible, back then when there was kind of like different rules about what could be publicly posted, a lot of people still had their email addresses publicly visible attached to their aliases. And so, I scoured through all those aliases I kind of recognized, because back then on the CTFPL sites, you had thousands of people who were registered on those PL sites. I tracked down all these email addresses and started sending out email blasts to all these former infantry players. And now keep in mind, probably 90% of those came back to an email address that's no longer working, or it was a spoof email address to begin with.
Right.
But nonetheless, that's how I got a hold of Slipknot, Jojo Man, Orby, Rue, and a variety of other people through that method. And so that was kind of neat. And then one funny story is about Conniver. So I found an email address for Conniver on one of the Wayback Machine CTFPL sites. And as part of his email address, instead of an email address, it had a SoundCloud website. Oh, I'm going to click on that and visit it. Well, he still had this SoundCloud website published from like 2008. And it's just like this website that's still up and exists, but nothing's going on it. And then it said, on the SoundCloud website, it had the guy's name and the city he was from. And then lo and behold, he lived like 45 minutes away, less than 20 minutes away from me. I said, "Oh, son of a gun! He lives in the same county that I live in." I said, "Let me find him on Facebook. Let me shoot him a message." And I guess on my Facebook profile, it shows that I'm in law enforcement, wherever the case is, and so he's out of the country. So I shoot him a message, say, "Hey man, is this Conniver from infantry?" Or I said, "Hey man, hey, is this Conniver?" I forget exactly how I said it, but I said, "Yeah," and then he blocks me, and I'm like, what the hell was that about? And so I hit him up on my alternate Facebook account. And I said, bro, this is Z-Man from infantry. What are you doing? And so he saw that I was a law enforcement officer from the same county he was from, and he thought he had warrants. And so, um, so he was blocking the police, not blocking ZMN, and so that was funny. But maybe it would have been better had he just blocked me and I not circled back. But that's neither here nor there. But no. So those methods, of course, and then scouring through Discord, and the free infantry Discord's got a bunch of old players on there. Tracking them down through there was pretty challenging. But the most effective tool I had was, as people started coming back to the game, either posting on Discord or posting on the CTFDL Facebook page, updates about who all is returning.
Yep.
Because we all know, as fun as infantry is the game and playing and the mechanics, etc., people really like infantry because of the community, because of the relationships, because of the friendships, because of the nostalgia. And that is much more of a selling point than saying, hey, come play O versus D, And so when people started seeing, oh my gosh, hey, look who showed up, look who's here, look, I played with that guy years ago, I want to go say hi to them. That became much more of a selling point than the game itself did.
I know, that's what made me and Doug come back, man. Like, me and Doug talk frequently on Messenger, and you'd post these lists, and we'd be like, dude, you actually think like all those people are coming back, and like that's true, or you think he's blowing smoke up people's ass? And he logged in and he wrote me, and he's like, nah, dude, this is real. Like, these people are actually on. Like, there's 60 people in TP right now. And that's what got me to come back too, is, all that. I wasn't planning on playing, but like I logged in just to chat with old friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I kind of had this, this pathway to getting people back. And I think the only people who really caught on to this were Kelby, Hearth, and Desi maybe, because I would intentionally blur lines between who joined the Discord and who actually actively downloaded the game and was in the game. And so, like, it's very easy for somebody to be like, okay, man, I'll join the Discord, that's fine. And they'll join the Discord, they'll say hello, and then they disappear. But when I would post saying, hey, look at all these people who are back on Discord in the game, it was really on Discord or the game. But I'm selling it as Discord and the game. Right. And so people say Adept and Brood and so. Yeah, they're back on Discord. But but then all of a sudden, just I'll use Kelby as an example. Angelus logs on. He's like, oh man, where's Adept? I saw Adept is back. And Adept's nowhere to be found. But all of a sudden he's like, oh, well, shit, well, Jericho's here. Man, Jericho, how's it going? Boom, got Kelby, And so, that was a very effective method. But Hearth was very quick to point out, like, hey, you son of a bitch, I haven't been logged into the game. What are you doing? And I said, well, I mean, you were on the Discord, Hearth. You were on the Discord, okay? it's close enough. And but nonetheless, it helped give people the, and I'm going to call it like I see it. Nobody wants to be the first one back, because nobody wants to show up and all their buddies aren't there. And then you're like, okay, why am I the only one here? So it was kind of trying to be very nimble on how to approach that and try to get either swaths of people back together or try to get that one core player back, like an Albert. And if Albert comes back, well, shit, well, maybe Desi will log on, maybe Fizzum will log on, maybe Rocky will log on. If I can get Boss back, maybe Tyson will log on, and Jedi will log on, and Sword of Rage will log on, and etc. So it's trying to be strategic with who you get back. And a little white lie is okay here and there, but ultimately, we ended up seeing, by the time the first draft league started, we're seeing, the highest numbers that Free Infantry has had to log into the game since its inception.
Yep.
So that was pretty cool, pretty neat, and ultimately, I think it's good for the game. I think it's good for CTF. I think it's good for USL. I think it's good for infantry in general, and it's great to see the work that so many people have done. You, Beso, I mean, I could go on. Emperor now, Kelby with the podcast, with the live streams, I mean, all the Flair. I mean, so many people contributed. Soup, my God, building websites, Axis focusing on data and math reworks, and Joe and AEI and Andrew doing all their dev work. I mean, it's really been this great kind of team effort. Everybody kind of contributing something, even if people are just contributing playtime and logging in time. That's all contribution, and it's just been really kind of cool seeing it come together. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. But recruiting people was hard. It was long. It was tough. But I had so much enjoyment when people actually coming back and being able to share the updates. It was cool. It was like a little point of pride. It was cool.
Yeah, I agree. So like when you get all these people back and you put in all that work, you're seeing like 60, 70 people on TP Tuesdays. At what point were you like, all right, I'm going to start the draft league? And, you know, how did you go about it? Did you build a crew first and then do the draft league? Or were you just like, all right, it's just me. I'm running for it. I'm going to do it.
Good question. So so in reality, it started off as the latter. So, you know, I had kind of floated the idea around with a couple key people that I kind of, you know, I respected their opinions, and there are people that were, you know, admins previously or league leadership previously. Hey, you know, everybody kind of had this long shot dream of bringing PL back. Everybody realized we didn't have the population for it yet. Everybody's going, hey, well, maybe once we have enough population to get up to 4 squads, we can get CTFDL going, but that's still a ways away. That was kind of the general consensus. But we kind of got to this point. Albert, you mentioned, you know, we had 60, 70 people logged in a mix, just a mix arena, and which was huge. But I knew that was not sustainable because either one, people are going to get sick and tired of not playing, or two, people are going to get sick and tired of playing pub only, or three, people are going to get sick and tired of the quality of play, because playing the game and being competitive is not the same thing. And most of us played League, you know, relationships, and of course, but most of us enjoyed the competitive aspect of the game. That was kind of our driving force to participate. And so the people that I had kind of consulted with, everybody kind of shut down the idea of a draft league. And, you know, there was some push and momentum going towards an OBD league that was kind of stat driven or fantasy driven almost. You know, it wasn't like squads or teams. It was more individual based. It was more point based. And I think there's a place for that. Whether that's, you know, concurrent with an organized league or off season, I think there's a place for that. But, you know, I don't think people log in to play infantry for the individual prowess. You know, they want to be part of the team. That's just my own kind of, maybe it's my naive look at it, but that's my idealistic look at it. But my biggest concern was, here we are, we've now reached the point where we are almost at daily populations of between 40 and 60 people during peak hours, mixing till 3 o'clock in the morning on a work night. I mean, that takes some commitment, stupidity or commitment, one of the two.
Yeah.
But we were all there for it, and I knew something had to be done. I knew it would not be healthy for the game to try to compete with USL on Sundays. It would not be healthy for the league to kind of turn USL into an adversary by trying to compete with them or steal their players. So we had to do something that was complementary to USL's schedule. And so their off season was the only really legitimate time to try to start something.
Yeah.
But the off season was approaching quickly. And I had a hard time getting some of the support that I needed to kind of get a draft league started. And so, kind of like what I did in the past, whether it was starting PT or Elite or whatever else, it's okay, well, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And so, you know, I decided to dive in. You know, hindsight being 2020, there were a lot of things and decisions I made that are probably very premature at the time, and I can look back and say, well, you know, it was crunch time, and I should have done this, I should have done that. All that's true, and but you know, of all people, what Jesse or Wolven reminded me of, because I eventually, you know, was able to get Wolven on as like the head ref of the first draft league, and he ended up being a tremendous help. Was, you know, he kind of pulled me aside. He said, "Hey, man, like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Like, just ask. And that was kind of my biggest problem. You know, I kind of got, I didn't ask anybody for help. I was just asking people like the general idea, what do you think about a draft league? And I took their lack of interest as meaning the same thing as their unwillingness to help, which was a mistake on my part.
Yeah.
And so instead of just being direct and forward and saying, hey man, I would like to do this, will you help me? I said, yeah, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And it wasn't until that process got started that thankfully some people started coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, well, I'll help with this, or I'll help with that, or I'll help with this. And and that certainly helped because it was quite a big undertaking to kind of start from scratch, and not having any clue of how much interest it would actually involve. And then all of a sudden, a week goes by and the registration's being opened, and you've got, I forget exactly what it was, 115, 118 registrations. It was like, holy shit, that's a lot more interest than I was expecting 60. And it really blew up quite a bit. And but yeah, that's kind of how it got started. But thankfully, while I kind of started it solo, people very, very quickly piled on, jumped in to help, and honestly kind of bailed me out because there's no way I could have sustained it by myself. So I'm
Dude,
so
it's a
thankful
lot
so
of
many
work,
people
man.
jumped in. Yeah, it is, and especially I had visions of grandeur. And of course, I mean, Beso, talk about saving the day with his live streams and all the commentary work and facilitating all those things, bringing in you guys to come help with those things. I mean, that was huge. Because I wanted to incorporate podcasts, and I wanted to make the whole draft itself its own event with music and graphics and visual aids and buzzers and all this cool stuff. But it's like there's just not enough time in the day to make all that happen. And so that was a challenge. But through all the bumps and bruises and hiccups that we experienced in season 1 of Draft League, I'm glad we did it. And I'm glad, minus those bumps and bruises, like I mentioned, I'm glad it went off okay.
Yeah, I think I said it in the championship live stream. It was super successful. Like when you first messaged me and was like, "Hey, here's a sign up thing," like I was super busy, and like I told you, I can't play, and I don't really have an interest in playing in a draft league. And I was like, hopefully it works out, but like in my opinion, I didn't think it was going to work out. And then you're like, "Oh, first night we got 50, and then we're up to 70, and like we're up to 110 now. Like it's going to be 6 teams." I'm like, "Holy shit, this is pretty cool." And then I ended up getting injured, so I was like, more time. I was kind of laid up. I started watching the live streams and the commentary from like Kelby and Hirth and Biso doing the streaming and stuff, and I was like, damn, like this is actually happening right now. This is so cool. And I kind of got like back to the Camp Chaos thing, those vibes again, where I'm like, damn, this is happening. Like we have organized play happening. It's not the most competitive, but it's still competitive play. This is really cool. Like then I message you like, hey, if you need anything, I'll help out in any way possible. And you're like, oh, Kelby's not here. If you want to commentate this game, yeah, sure, no sweat, I got it. So like, it is cool to see it all unravel. And kudos to you for doing all that, man. Like that's a shitload of work that you put in and a lot of hours and like digging. I mean, you like literally dug just to find one player conniver from way back when, you know what I mean? So I can only imagine what you did for the rest of the people. It's wild.
And I found him in the rural fields of Thailand.
Yeah, man. Like it's actually insane, dude. Like the amount of trouble you went through and just to get it off the ground. But I want to tie that into like something else here. So you do all that, you get Draft League going, it's super successful. You have 6 teams. Kind of went off without a hitch, man. Like obviously people complained about stuff, but I mean when you have 110 people are gonna complain. But it goes off. It's super good. You get this great, stream at the end of it. Everyone's happy. Everyone's like, yo, this is sick. Numbers blown out of the water for infantry. A said that we've literally capped it out that second last Sunday. So everything's like on an upward trend. Even after the draft league, like people are still signing on. Did you burn out? Like what happened? Did you burn out and be like, I need a break, or did like stuff just get too busy? Like what prevented you from coming back? And then like, now Amp obviously stepped in and helped out, which is great. Like he got it off the ground because I think by the time that you logged back in, it probably would have been way too late to start. I think it was like a week after the draft league or something like that. So like what happened? Did you burn out and stuff? And like what led to you not coming back to start it again?
Yeah, no, good question. And it was really kind of a multitude of things. So one, certainly there was a bunch of burnout involved, and to provide some context to that too, the amount of involvement and again, part of this is just because I was not willing to ask for help. When in reality, had I just asked for help, who knows how many people would have look how many people lined up to help without me even asking. What would it have been like had I actually extended, the request for assistance. But even like small things, when it came time to name teams, only about half the captains like picked a team name. And because the other one's like, I don't know a team name, I'll figure something out. And it's like, well, we need to make announcements. We've got, to advertise this thing. And so then I'm having to come up with team names. And then it's like, hey, well, make like a banner or something for your team. Nobody's doing it. So then I'm the one who makes all the banners for the teams and create the team name. So it's like I find myself playing this admin role, and then doing the administrative side of the captain work on top of that.
Yeah.
And then because I wasn't willing, I did ask Kelby and Joe and Woolman for some assistance with like the brackets and the scheduling. That's just not my forte. It's just not my strong suit. And especially with like something kind of odd, like a league of 6 teams, it's a little challenging. But so they were very helpful in that aspect. But I had to wear so many hats that became a little challenging, a little overwhelming. And then on top of that, trying to continue to grow the population, still trying to, being the primary one to be hosting the OVDs and mixes until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. We didn't have enough people that were willing to step up and do the hosting. So, even outside the formal league events, I'm playing the primary host and event person, which was a little daunting, a little tasking as well, and taxing as well. And so all of that certainly contributed to the burnout. And then just real world things, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but, I had several things going on with work, just in terms of what I do. I've got my 40-hour work week. I teach part-time at 5 different universities. I'm still currently running 2 political campaigns, all at the local level, not for DJT, but all at the local level. And on top of that, what really kind of was the spark of everything, Kelly and I had a miscarriage. And so that was a little challenging, certainly. It wasn't our first, but first experience dealing with that. But nonetheless, that took up just a lot of the mental space and the emotional space, where you don't really want to be invested in other things at the time or be distracted with other things at the time. So as much as I had this affinity for all the success that we experienced with Draft League Season 1, I had to tell myself, like, hey, I have got to shut off these distractions for just about everything unrelated to these core functions that I have to submit a bunch of time and energy to. So, I mean, I didn't respond to Discord messages. I didn't respond to Facebook messages. We've all been part of the same Facebook group chat for 12 years, 15 years, something like that. I went MIA from that, wasn't talking in there, and just trying to make a conscious decision to say, hey, everything that's not part of family, part of work, part of the political campaigns, part of teaching, I'm going to have to cut this out temporarily so I can make sure I'm really good at these things for this period of time, and then I can kind of get back to having some leisure elements in my life. And it wasn't until I happened to get a notification from Sort of Rage Greed on Discord, and I kind of looked at him if I got a notification on my phone, even if I wasn't replying to him, and I get this notification, and he's bitching about Emperor, and he's like, I can't believe Emperor did not let me sign up for the draft league, even though I was, 5 minutes before the draft started. I can't believe this. And I'm like, I would have let you join, And so I'm like, when's the draft going on? You right now. So I said, okay. And so I so I went ahead and logged in. This was, a couple weeks ago, whatever it was. And all you guys were, it looked like y'all, wrapping up the draft or whatever the case is. But that's why I decided, what? That's funny. I'm gonna make an appearance, and maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get re-addicted again. And I am. So it's good to be back. The itch is being scratched, and I'm back to having a good time. And I can't thank all you guys for helping get Draft League Season 2 up and running. And I look forward to one. It'll be nice this season just participate in it. And then not to mention last season, loved Dark Bomber, but then he asked me to be a co-captain for his squad too, so I had to wear that hat also. And but it'll be nice to just participate this season and kind of get reacclimated like that, and then who knows what future seasons will look like, and how I can support or help or contribute. But no, I look forward to doing that in whatever way I can, and I think this podcast is a good first step to that.
Appreciate that. Hopefully that's like, you learn from that now. You know that you can't just do absolutely everything. You're on a squad now where, like, you got Bonds, you got Sav. They're both two leadership roles. You don't really have to do anything but show up and play if you don't want to. Hopefully, like that now puts you in like a good spot, and then you can do some more maybe down the road once everything else calms down. Like, do you plan on ever wanting to be the admin again, like in Draft League 3, like down the road?
Yeah, sure. No, I wouldn't mind doing it. Now that I know now that I know, but also should have known that there is this great support system out there to help. But also, I also want to make sure that while everybody can recognize that, and this just comes with being in a leadership position, no matter in what capacity that is, that you have to be able to accept that you can't make everybody happy. But certainly, I wouldn't mind taking a stab at that stuff again, as long as the direction that I would like to contribute in is also something that's supported by the community itself. Because if there's contrary perspectives or viewpoints on what direction things need to go in, I don't necessarily have interest in fighting that fight if it's so like polar opposite of directions that I believe in. But certainly if there is some consensus, and people are kind of on the same page with maybe not every outcome being the same, but the same general direction that we're trying to move things in, if that's somewhat similar, then absolutely I'd be happy to help. But certainly, and probably most importantly, for others who want to help and get involved, the last thing I want to do is stand in the way of others that want to learn how to contribute or to take leadership roles or positions. Because at the end of the day, everybody can learn once they jump in. And you spent many years, as did I, playing CTFDL, never having been an admin. And eventually, at some point, either somebody let us, move into those roles, or there was a gap that needed to be filled, and we filled it. But so I never want to block anybody or prevent anybody from being in a position to volunteer or contribute if they have great interest in doing that too.
Yeah, I just want to add real quick, looking at the mentioned growth from, let's say, March or April to now, we talked about the first league going off without a hitch, more successful than a lot of people expected. I was also pessimistic about the whole thing as an outsider that didn't plan on participating. I was thinking, yeah, you're probably going to get about 60 people out of this pop from mixing, and then maybe you'll have a few matches where you get 10v10. Aside from Verb Squad, I mean, the attendance was outstanding for most squads. They were able to show a solid 10 minimum. Most had 12 to 13. I think a lot of the planning work you mentioned, sure, some of us stepped up and helped in between, but there's not enough kudos around the whole community to go around for ZMN in this case. And he gets a lot of hate, like, oh, ZMN messed up this one thing. I think there was some scheduling issue week 2 or something, like maybe a game happened before it should have. I don't think people understand the hours that went into getting from April to where we are now, and they really can't. Like, there's too many conversations that we've had, that others have had. The time that went in every day, hours put into making sure things did go off without a hitch, and then the aforementioned contributions of like Biso, who steps up with a full production out of nowhere. Like, that meant everything to, I think, popularizing the league and leading into the kind of runway they've set for CTFDL 2. So, sure, you're not running this one, but I still think you're undercredited for the first one and the continued growth of the game in itself. So I thank you for that as someone that likes playing the game.
No, I appreciate that. And when you're talking April and May and June, it also makes me think, not only did we have, and this part is a true demonstration of teamwork. Not only did we have, and I hope I'm not reopening any wounds for the general CTF population here, but we also had not just the struggles in recruiting new players or bringing in old players or convincing returning players to come back. We also had some internal conflict in the game. We were struggling with free infantry leadership about how often we can OBD and how often we can mix, and pub play versus mix play. What's the priority? And is CTFPL going to be held down? Is USL going to be prioritized? Does CTFPL even have a future under the existing conditions? And so we also had all of those battles that were needing to be fought. And Kelby, how many? This was before Albert made his return, but how many lengthy conversations with 15 people did we have? Kev was involved, Ace was involved. I mean, so Silly Wanker was involved. I mean, so many, Saab was involved. So many people, kind of banded together. Oop, I kind of get disconnected. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're good.
So many people got involved in that process, and I really like that too, because it also, some people that were part of that group may have played like, around each other over the years, but
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that kind of like bonded a lot of people together too. Prior to that, that's when Flair and I were mortal enemies, and then we kind of go through that process together on the end of it, becoming good friends. And I think that happened with other people as too, because just like we talked about, we want to play a game on a competitive squad that's got a unified mission. Well, for a short period there, we were all unified together, trying to make sure that CTF could survive and last, and the version of CTF that we strongly believed should exist could remain. And thankfully, we came out on the winning end of that, because very rarely do we hear these arguments from people in positions of power that we are being unfair to the public population, or we're neglecting pub. And I think we all agree we want pub to have its place. We want pub to thrive, but not at the expense of what's going to keep the league alive, and that's organized CTF play. But even going back to April, May, June, July, and if we all recall July 4th, the true fireworks that went off with the embedded code about private arenas not being, physically capable of being created to host OBDs until after 11 o'clock Eastern. I mean, we had some really interesting times there. And if anybody deserves credit, it's Kelby, because if there's one thing that remains consistent, is Kelby is always the calm, cool, collected one in the group. Here I am. We're gonna burn this motherfucker to the ground.
I've had enough.
Kelby's like, no, this is not the battle we fight. We must do it the honorable way, and we need to calm down. We need to do such and such, But it was nice having Kelby, Angela's keeping us grounded and making sure we didn't show our ass. And I'll also give kudos to somebody else who was vitally important to keeping people grounded, and it's kind of an unexpected form of kudos, and that's Gun Girl. Gun Girl back then was actually very involved in those conversations too, and she was a wonderful voice of reason. And I think her perspective was very valuable. She was actually, as new to infantry as you can get. She had been around like a year or so, and kind of dabbling in free infantry prior to much of a population existing. But she had many, 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 many years of experience playing kind of these kind of niche games, and so she's very familiar with the environment, and she brought a lot of wisdom to the conversation. So that really helped too. But so many people contributed to that portion of the conversation, and had we not crossed that hurdle, draft league, organized play, CTF, or even OBDs and mixes may not have been possible. So to Angelus and Kelby and everybody else who was involved during that process, they all deserve some kudos too, because had that not happened successfully, who knows what, if anything, would be going on right now.
Yeah, I think it's just another one of those hindsight appreciative things of, man, this is happening July 4th, like you said, the weekend of or whatever. We're all a little bit upset about it. We're livid. And hindsight, knocking down that wall and explaining what we'd like to see from the game, it led to the more open pathway where we have a lot more leverage and a freeway now where we can not do exactly what we want, but almost. It's our zone. They understand that. You're giving autonomy and whatnot. So it was getting through that hurdle that got us there. And one more shout out. I don't want to thank everyone in the community, but there's been so many. You've mentioned so many. One name I haven't heard, and maybe I just missed it, was Exodus. This guy comes out of the woodwork, former developer for the game. I didn't really know them because I didn't play for infantry before now. So these old versions he worked on, I don't really remember. If I played, I don't remember. I'd heard his name, I didn't know who he is. I think as a developer, we develop things. I work as a corporate developer. I have for 15 plus years now. Sometimes they break and people go crazy. There's never enough appreciative things for things that didn't break and succeeded. So I think a good shout out for him is something that's necessary and well deserved.
I completely agree, and I'll just say one quick thing about Exodus. And like you said, hindsight is vital. But when Exodus was the primary dev, there was probably no bigger critic than me for Exodus's dev work back then. And I also really never having been involved in any dev aspect of things, you don't know what you don't know. And I did not have the ability back then to see it through his lens or see it through his eyes. And he spent many years greatly being undervalued and underappreciated for the work he did. And he literally had zero incentive to, one, return to the game to a population he probably believed hated his guts. And then two, he had zero incentive to dive in head first and bail us out of many issues we had with the development side of the game. And he did it with enthusiasm. He did it with excitement, and he did it leaving all the previous BS behind him, much of which had nothing to do with anything he did negatively. Everything was kind of negatively done to him. And so I completely agree with you that he's been a tremendous help. And I also think he's been a valuable resource to people like Joe and AEI and Andrew, who have been very interested in doing dev work. And he's been a great teacher, a great mentor, and just somebody to bounce ideas off and get advice from. But good call by bringing it back to this. It's been a huge help.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I said to like you said mentioned earlier, I didn't come back until basically the championship match of season 1, right? So that's like when I really got involved. I did watch the videos, but I wasn't on the game or anything like that. And the first thing I said to Axie when I got back, people were just chewing them out for like the stupidest little change that, something went wrong. It's one little fix. He literally recycled the server and it's fixed, right? And everyone's like, oh, you stupid ass, like whatever. And I PM him right away, dude. I'm like, man, I can't believe you still do this shit and people still get on this way. And he was like, I don't know, dude. I just love it. You know what I mean? I just love the game. I just want to be able to play the game, and I want to be able to play it in a more up-to-date way. Like, even just the buy macros he done, the coding he's done for that stuff, it makes it so much better for us. But people are like, oh, fuck that. I'm not doing that. That's stupid, blah, blah, blah. But everything he's doing now, like, sure, there's some stuff where not everybody agrees on it, but it's definitely for the best. Like, he's trying to better the game, and without him, we'd still be playing a stupid-ass game that was not updated since 2010.
Agreed. Completely agreed.
And you could echo the same thing for the folks who were recently editing the map. Joe's had his hands on it, AEI, Andrew, some other folks, I don't know, I'm sorry for that. But the community who isn't working on the dev side or the community management side like ZMN's closer to, they just don't fully understand how much effort it takes to do these things. It's not like they're taking 5 to 10 to 15 minutes out of their day. This is hours every week where they love it, they want to see it grow and succeed, so they're putting the time in voluntarily. There's no magic payroll. The shadow councils, people call it, aren't divvying out paychecks every week or anything. It's just people who are nerding out over a game trying to make it better for everyone. So shout out to all of them.
Yep, agreed. Completely agreed.
Yeah, it's actually insane. Like, just the update that Joe's done to CTFDL in the last, week and a half, he has had to put in so much time. Like, you got to put in every little detail, and then you got to put in vision, then you got to put in physics, and then you got to make sure it's all good, and you got to test it. Like, it's crazy. And like you said, Kelby, people don't appreciate it enough. Like, we logged on yesterday to a fresh map. It's balanced. Like, Joe's taking the time to add buildings, remove buildings, remove spawns, like, for minerals, and just literally balance the map out completely. And then people are like, oh, this is stupid. I don't have a bridge over here anymore. It's like, man, shut up.
Wire. It reminds me of prison. I don't like it. Okay, I can't help you, man. Like,
yeah, it just goes to show. I mean, there's so much going on behind the scenes that people, they don't appreciate it, and it's what allows us to be able to log in and press F12 and play. So, like you guys said, to say it again, shout out to all those people who are actually putting in the time to make it work and to make it better for all of us, because without that, it just wouldn't be as enjoyable as it is. And with that, guys, Z, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. It's been a blast. I've learned some stuff from your black book of history on CTFDL. It's refreshing to talk about it again. I guess my memory's not as good as I'd like to think it is. And thank you, Kelby, again for hosting. I appreciate it. And come back next week, guys, for the next episode of CTF Underground. Thank you.